Hey everyone, welcome to some new malicious compliance stories where people conform to the letter, but not the spirit of a request. I hope you had a great day. But first, thank you for subscribing to the channel and for all those likes. Today we have 4 great stories, so let's get right into them. Shall we? The first story is called A Long Time Ago. This happened many years ago, in the late 80s. I was working in the tech section of a bank when desktop computers were new and deeply suspect to the owners. Somebody bought a new software program. In typical bank fashion, he ordered it loaded on a junk closet desktop computer that didn't have the legs to run it. It said so right in the documentation, but somebody thought he could bully the machine the way he bullied his secretary. Remember, this is a long time ago. His generation used a dictation machine, a typing pool and an adding machine with a crank. They gave this unfortunate configuration to me and told me to make it work without asking for anything that costs money. And I did, pretty much, but I couldn't make it run reliably. The problem wasn't with the poor suffering antique IBM machine, but with the software. I studied the manual, which did not admit to the possibility of such problems. Troubleshooting was basically reboot and pray. The software company was on the other side of the world, 12 hours offset from our time zone. They didn't have a helpline, just an email address monitored during their office hours. My requests for aid were replied to on the next day, if I was lucky. Every email was answered with the same pre-written stock letters. We didn't read your email and aren't going to, so reboot. Here's an answer to the question we assume you asked. We do not admit that telephones exist, especially if it means getting out of bed. We will not give you the email of an actual person. I documented the whole month-long conversation and reported it to somebody. I was not going to carry the can for this nonsense when somebody tried to blame me for it. Meanwhile, the software company bragged in many jolly advertising emails about how great they were. Oddly, I did not love them for it. In their last email, they informed me that they had set up a user forum where their customers could joyfully burble about how wonderful their software and company was. Do join up and tell the world how you love us. I posted the whole interaction, nearly a month of daily pleas for help, plus a brutally complete recap of the problem to their forum. This was not at all what they planned for, that someone would actually use it to publicly demonstrate a failure of software, documentation and support. And then it happened. A new human got back to me as soon as they woke up over there, and told me how to fix it. I was very sweet to him and said a number of things he probably didn't figure out for several hours. The next story is called Don't Interrupt Me. This happened to me yesterday at work. I work in construction management, currently as a project engineer on a large site in New York City. My day-to-day duty is the equivalent of a site superintendent, walking the site and ensuring safety procedures are followed and coordination between trades stays tight and efficient. Recently, the project manager I would answer to quit, leaving the rest of us on site struggling to pick up the many broken pieces he left behind for us. The manager that came in to take his place, Matt, has been coming to me on a daily basis to help him get up to speed on what was left over from my old boss leaving. Details like the status of certain trades, deliveries, location of fixtures, you get the idea. Matt is a great boss and a really genuine guy. The type of person that is overly nice about everything. Well, except for one thing. He hates being interrupted while on the phone. Now that's a pretty reasonable request, one that we all follow, even if we need some critical info from him, as we've seen him blow up once or twice after being interrupted. Well, yesterday there was a safety emergency on site, meaning I couldn't be by the office for a large chunk of the day. Finally, after dealing with the emergency, I stopped by the office as I had my own questions for Matt and found him on the phone with our architect. Now, knowing I'd be a fool to interrupt, I take a seat a little bit away and wait patiently while also listening in to the conversation being had. Matt was asking about the locations of mill rock on site, as our blueprints do a terrible job of marking them out for us. The architect was also struggling to give him definite answers, and I could tell that Matt was getting aggravated. Now, unbeknownst to Matt, I had already put together a beautiful marked up drawing of the exact locations of every piece of mill rock on site a few months ago, knowing that our drawings were lacking in this regard. Against my better judgment, I got his attention to try and let him know that he was wasting his time. This was met with an aggressive hand wave and scowl. I shrugged, laughed a bit inside and returned to my desk to email Matt my marked up drawing. Well, about 45 minutes later, Matt gets off the phone and calls me back over to ask what I needed from him. Oh, nothing, I said, but you might want to check your email. Let's just say I now have permission to interrupt Matt while he's on the phone going forward. The third story is called They Asked for It. Let me start by saying I'm not from the US, but from Europe. My company policy regarding working from home and office days is the following and not flexible. We have 2 set office days and 3 set work from home days. In the heat of 2020, the government obligated everyone to work from home, which we all did without any issues. As of recently, it is no longer obligated, only highly recommended if working from home is possible. And with that starts the malicious compliance. My husband and I both woke up sick with a heavy cold. Nothing major. Cough, snotty noses and sore throats. My husband called into work and informed his employer. They told him it's no problem and he can reschedule his appointments to Teams meetings or to another day and work from home. I decided to call my employer too to check the company policy, as I have an obligated office day. I don't want to make any other colleagues sick and my job does not require my attendance at the office. I can work from home perfectly. My employer replied that I can only work from home if I provide them with a doctor's note mentioning that I am indeed sick and working from home is necessary. If I cannot or don't want to provide such a note, I must come into the office, sick or not. Okay, I call my doctor, explain the situation and ask how to proceed and what they recommend. The doctor didn't know what to say. My employer is actually asking for a note that mentions I am indeed sick enough to stay home, but not sick enough to stop working. Yeah, that's not a thing. So they told me that I am indeed sick, I will receive a sick note and will not be working today or tomorrow either. On top of that, I must get tested because I'm pregnant and we must take no risks. I sent my employer an email with the sick note attached, mentioning that I will not be working and will get myself tested. My employer asked me if I will resume work after the test. Well, no. Unfortunately, I am sick and have a note mentioning I am not seen fit to work and am even quarantined. So I will no longer be able to work at all for the time mentioned on my doctor's note they asked for. The last story is called The Master of Business Judo. This story concerns my former boss, who was the best boss I've ever had. The guy always looked after us, dealt with a lot of BS, but his real skill was in dealing with very senior executives and corporate bureaucracy. He's a master of business judo. Anytime some executive would try and throw their weight around, he would use the momentum against them to get his way. This was my favorite example. At the time I worked for a very large multinational company and my boss was a director. One day we were chatting when boss got a call from a colleague, call her other boss, who ran a similar team with the company but in a different organization. My team had developed a product and other boss's team inherited it and was in charge of keeping it going. Other boss's team was good and we liked working with them, except for one guy, entitled dude, who had been given control of the product. He had worked for a separate manager for years, but his manager had left to go to a competing company, so entitled dude ended up with other boss. He was trouble from the first moment, as he clearly thought he should be running her team. She was an executive director, he was a senior manager with no direct reports. He even told her that to her face. He was insecure, backstabbing, ambitious and wanted her team to manage, to do his work. He had gotten the project because he had the most availability and his seniority entitled him to it. Other boss couldn't give it to anyone else or take it from him, even though she wanted to. Other boss was complaining to my boss that entitled dude had notified her formally that his current work situation was untenable. He said that running the product on his own was forcing him to work 7 days a week, 12+ hours a day. He was barely spending time with his family and he needed headcount to make this run. He claimed he needed 5 full-time employees reporting to him to make this happen. Now, other boss only had 4 direct reports at this time for reference and boss had 5. It was also total BS that he needed a team. The product basically was self-contained and he had to fire off a single Python script. The problem was that at this company, this sort of claim was taken very seriously. Many people use such claims of being overworked and creating a hostile environment to build their own personal empires. Clearly, this was entitled dude's intent. Whereas, other boss called to complain to my boss because she felt like her hands were tied, even though entitled dude was obviously lying. She had to give him staff or she would be in trouble with the company. She hoped my boss could give her some technique to maybe only give him 1 headcount. This is when my boss's genius went on full display. He smiled and said, "You don't have to give him anything, he'll take it all back and be happy." After telling other boss what to say, we hung up and heard what happened later. Other boss called in the entitled dude, who looked very smug like he knew he was about to get his way, having outsmarted everyone. Thank you so much for coming in and for taking the time to tell me how awful your situation is. Yes, thank you. I hope we can fix this, because this cannot go on and I would hate to have to escalate this further. Absolutely, it made me feel horrible to know you've been working this long and under so much strain. I only wish you had brought this to me sooner so that we could have taken care of this before. We are going to take care of all of this today. The entitled dude apparently had a massive, obnoxious smile. So you've approved my 5 direct reports? I believe that means I need a title change to director. Oh, no, we can't do that. No, I'm sorry for the confusion. What I meant is that, effective today, you are no longer running the project. Instead, you'll take on a small project, which had no external visibility and was a task nobody wanted. This requires much less time, and I will give this great employee your project. Now you can have a much healthier work-life balance and relax. And I'm counting on you letting me know if this project takes too much time also, as I can always give you this really bad project instead, which is even easier. And worse. Please let me know, because you shouldn't have had to suffer like this. Apparently, the entitled dude was stunned. He clearly hadn't thought of this outcome. He tried to backtrack immediately, but she heard none of it. She relegated him to this minor project, and there was nothing he could do about it. Entitled dude left the company 2 months later. And with that, we end today's video. Let me know what you think about the stories. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the stories and today's video? I hope you enjoyed the video. And I hope you have a great day. Stay safe. Bye bye.